Should we begin? I'm so excited to have Nikki Black here with us tonight to moderate. Nikki, would you like to kind of introduce yourself and share who you are with our community?
Sure. My name is Nikki Black. I am a womanist, a intersectional feminist, sociologist, probably best known as a literary artist. I'm a Los Angeles native and lifelong resident. Specifically, I reside in Inglewood, California. I'm from Inglewood, so that's really important. I like to shout that out. And yes, so I reside on unceded Tongva land. And yeah, I'm just super excited to be here tonight. Sun, you reached out to me and asked me if I was available to moderate this event, and there was no hesitation. So I thank you all for welcoming me into this space. I'm so excited to be in community with you and to learn from you and to share, your unique perspectives with the audience and the community tonight.
So, I think, would it be helpful? I think we should probably all go around and introduce ourselves, share who we are, what we do in the world, and what's most important to us about being a part of this committee, maybe. Yeah. Should I begin? Okay, great. So my name is Casey Zavala, she, her pronouns. Currently residing on the land of the Minimem Wintu and Shasta people up in Mount Shasta, and originally from San Francisco, Ohlone territory. I am very excited to be here tonight for our second Inclusion Committee Roundtable, and just really looking forward to having the opportunity to hear from the community and just open up this space. For me, it's been a couple of years of being in this. I guess it's been 1 year of this committee. I have to think about that, but I think it's been 1 year and a few months. So it's just been a lot of opportunity for me to deepen my listening skills, and I'm excited to continue to kind of create spaces to center BIPOC, queer, trans folks, and do my best to be a good listener. I am also, I guess, the main organizer of Modern Witches. This was like my baby from the very beginning. So that's important to share. I'm also a professional tarot reader and artist. Yeah, that's what I'll share tonight.
Yay, I'm next to you in my boxes, so I'll just popcorn myself. Hello, everyone. I am Sonia Stell. I am born, bred, and buttered on Tongva land in Los Angeles, and that's where I live now as well. And I am a soothsayer, just a truth teller, and a claircognizant witch, which is a clear knowing, to be strong or to be lively person, because that's what the etymology of those words mean. And if you haven't guessed, I'm also known as the word witch because I am a word nerd and I like word culture and being wordy and nerdy. Yes, it's been a year officially for us on the Inclusion Committee, and 2 years now officially doing Witches Confluence remotely. 2 of however many we will need to take. And I'm happy to be here to talk about community and responsibility and engagement and all the other topics that we get into with Nikki Black. So thanks for having me.
I'll go. I'm Asia, she, her. I am currently in Los Angeles on unceded Tongva land. I am known as a spirit guide coach. I'm a medium and spiritual advisor. I've been part of Witches Confluence since the beginning. I think it's an incredible community. What I love about it is that it keeps evolving and changing and wanting to learn and wanting to expand. And I find myself in every single meeting that all of us have had together, I learn. And that's part of like, I think that's one of the reasons that we're all witches. Witches love to learn. Witches love more information. Witches love to love. And that's why I'm excited to be here with all of you tonight.
I'll go next just to get it over with. I'm Batanya. I am currently living in Washington State and Methow Territory in the Methow Valley. I don't love talking about myself. I'm a formerly incarcerated person. I'm a trauma care worker, and I've been a student of that since I was a child. And I'm also a broom maker. And yeah, I'm just happy to be here and honored to share space with you all.
Hi, my name is Rorya Tariq, and I am super honored to be a part of this event and in this way in particular. I was before the pandemic, I was a massage therapist. I'm also a performer, artist, a ritualist. I have my own practice called a sovereign embodiment where I do divination. I also help people manifest their goals, moving from a liberated mindset from an idea all the way into reality. So I do graphic design as well. I do ritual creation for people, and basically multi type of is this healing work? I'm into it. Like that's my whole geek out about. My big goal is to help uplift Black, queer, and trans folk in particular, and to help all of us see ourselves as sovereign embodiments, which is why my practice is called a sovereign embodiment. So thank you all for being here with us tonight, and I'm excited to grow from the conversations that we're going to have.
I'll go. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah. I'm in Los Angeles currently on unceded Tongva land. Born here, grew up in San Diego, and spent a lot of time in the Bay Area. And I've been a part of Witches Confluence now for, I think this will be the third year. I'm also a part of the organizing committee, and I do all of the creative, aesthetic, digital stuff. I am an intuitive digital creative in my life and in all capacities for Witches Confluence. And I'm really grateful to be here and grateful to be in the company of so many incredible folks. And being a part of this committee for me has just been an opportunity to learn how to serve marginalized communities better and ask better questions and look at my own shortcomings and figure out how to just do it better and stay humble about it and, you know, put the ego aside and be here for the community.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jessie Susanna Carnatz, otherwise known as the Money Witch. I'm an intuitive financial coach, financial educator, and tax preparer for healers, hustlers, and creatives. I love the Inclusion Committee and the Witches Confluence. I've been involved with Witches Confluence since the beginning as a vendor and a teacher, and then on this committee. Some of my very favorite people sit on this committee, and I always love to be in conversation with you all. And I look forward to being in conversation with Nikki tonight. That's the new conversation. So thank you to all the participants for coming. And we were joking when we came up with the title because it like Roundtable, and then we were like, oh, is it like, what is a roundtable? We looked it up because we were like, it's like King Arthur or something. And then, but when we looked it up, it was like, it's about a lack of hierarchy, like that, a conversation where everybody sits in the same position in the lack of hierarchy And, you know, the beginning of this conversation is amongst the committee and the panelists, but we're really also here to be in conversation with everyone who came tonight. Everybody's a student and a teacher and a conversationalist. So we want to, you know, hear what people have to say and are happy to be here in transparency with the work that we've done this year. And just to continue this conversation, it's an important part of our committee to say that this is not like something that we're solving. This is just it's just holding an ongoing thread of conversation through the work that we're doing. So thanks to everybody.
I think that's all of us. So I forgot our most excellent title of this event, because I know that it has community in it and responsibility and other amazing words. But I kind of was thinking about this actually on the way over, so I wanted to say it. I learned through osmosis, through my own personal lived experience, that advocacy is always the responsibility of the individual and the collective, as a educating, mirroring mechanism of humanity. And I came to that conclusion because something occurred earlier today with an individual who I care about that upset me. And I expressed that it upset me, but I did not express how I would prefer to be treated until I got over my upsetness. And when I actually advocated for myself, it was as easy as them being like, my bad, yes, absolutely. And I was like, I could have been mad all day. I could have stayed mad for the rest of my life if I had just decided to keep that narrative, but instead I advocated for what I actually wanted, because I realized that apology is acknowledgement, it's not repair. And I was looking for the repair, but I was assuming that this individual would just know how to do it, which makes no sense, because probably if they knew how to do it, there wouldn't have been harm in the first place. So I realized I had to, because I knew what I needed, that I had to advocate for it. And so I came here practicing today and also saved myself from being in a foul ass mood. So just really happy for myself, because I have to live with me and I don't like feeling ways I don't like to feel. And that's my word on advocacy.
I love that. So I cannot state enough how excited I am to be here and to, you know, be facilitating really kind of this conversation. I guess I feel like I'm not even really facilitating it, because yes, Roundtable, like there's no hierarchy. And I love that, because it's about decolonizing, you know, community and conversation and learning, understanding that ideas and knowledge is always going to be bi-directional or multi-directional, depending on how many people are involved in the conversation. And so I'm really just here to, I think, witness, you know, what wisdom you all have to offer, and co-create the conversation with you, by, you know, maybe asking some questions and maybe reading some live questions that we have here. So I think we should just get into it, so that we can, get on with our evening and, you know, get to the good stuff. So I was really intrigued about, or by, some of the conversation that was happening really before we started, before the audience and additional community members came in, about the idea of a diversity and inclusion committee versus a justice and liberation committee. And that spoke to me, because diversity, I typically call it diversity and equity, because I mean, yeah, we can open the doors to everyone, but that doesn't mean we're listening to them, that we're seeing them, that we're holding them, that we're doing anything different. You know, we all exist in this space, and simply existing in the space doesn't create justice, doesn't create equity, doesn't do any of those things. And so I was just curious. It seemed like the consensus was like, yes, let's go with that language and change it. But I wanted to hear if anyone had any more in-depth ideas about the difference between diversity and inclusion versus justice and liberation.
I feel like diversity and inclusion is an acknowledgement, and it doesn't go much further than that. I feel like there's not enough teeth involved in it. For me, from what I have seen and how groups move when they talk about diversity and inclusion, it's almost like let's gather all of our, I do not use the word minority because I hate it and I think it is degrading. So I say marginalized. So it's like I feel like they're like, let's gather all our marginalized people and march them out and let people see that they exist. So we're doing a good job. And then they're like, let's take your ideas, let's have all these meetings, but then there's not a lot of action. So for me, I feel like having liberation and justice means that the work isn't done. It means that we are constantly engaging in the work. It is more active. It is more aware. It is not a place we're going to reach, but a place we're always going, which means we're always thinking about how not to be that asshole. So for me, I feel that that's stronger and it's more in alignment with who I am as a person, as someone who's doing the liberation work, and as someone who is working for justice, like equity. Yeah, justice has to be a big thing. And sometimes with diversity and what we see with diversity and inclusion, or what I see with diversity and inclusion, it's it has been a face or a facade, and I don't feel that's what this group is doing. I feel like everything that we have been trying to do has been along the lines of moving through liberated ways and liberated practices and trying to balance out or create situations where justice does exist. We live in a world where people are like, well, stuff ain't fair. And it's like, okay, then how do we make that fair? That's what justice is. How do we make it fair? How do we make it right? And I feel like justice is that movement. I feel like liberation is the place we're moving to justice from. So that's what I'll say on that.
I mean, I think that was fire. That was like so right on. And even it just makes me think about right after George Floyd, there was this rush on social media and through all the corporations to try to like be as diverse and inclusive as possible. And there was a lot of talk about it's a marathon, not a race. But, you know, I would say, you know, it definitely seems like for a lot of people, it was a race and they finished it a long time ago. So that's just I think we have to constantly unfortunately be reminding some people that the work is ongoing, and that, you know, there is no rest for the weary. This is not something that, you know, again, as I don't know who mentioned it earlier, that we're going to solve. This is going to be a continuous ongoing conversation, ongoing change, ongoing, you know, revolution, for many, many years to come. And the sooner we accept that, I think the sooner we can like kind of like dig in and get comfortable with that philosophy and really work towards activating change versus just, you know, creating an image of change.
100%. Yeah,
Yes.
I absolutely love, Rorya, what you were saying about the performative nature of diversity and inclusion. Yeah, absolutely. Senya.
Yes. Oh, I just wanted to say I was looking up the etymology, slowly like building it out. The last one is in liberate, but diverse means to turn. I mean, the etymology, the root word, the original sense meaning that we got our language from, if we are speaking one of the languages from Eurasia, essentially. Diverse means to turn or to bend plus aside, and originally had the sense meaning of different, different from the straight path, right? The turned aside path. Inclusion's etymology means to hook in, and justice means law. That's its original root word. Justice comes from jurist, actually. And liberate comes from liberal, and liberal's etymology is belonging to the people. So that was the original sense meaning of liberate. So I wanted to throw that out.
That's good. I love that. Belonging to the people. So meaning that like this space is ours. It was already ours to begin with. But what we're seeing, you know, is that it's a reclaiming of the space, obviously, because as people are othered and pushed out and marginalized, then, you know, here we are. But absolutely, I love the idea of moving, calling it what it really is, justice and liberation, as opposed to this performative, let's parade the others out. And to Aja's point, that urgency that came about after George Floyd was murdered, very violent, because it was like a hurry up and let's cure racism so we can get back to what we were doing, because we, you know, really didn't care anyway. So this is not a performance. This group, this committee is about that life. So the next question that I have, and anyone can answer this, is how exactly are committee members selected? How do you come to be a part of this committee? I know that there was last year there were there was a call for recommendations to expand the committee, but initially, you know, how did this committee come about?
Initially, it was suggested during conversations we were having with our organizing committee around that time of George Floyd's murder, and navigating kind of how do modern witches fit into this new paradigm that we're wanting to build. What do we do? And it was put forward by a couple of our committee members on our organizing committee to have an additional committee that would sort of operate in this way, to hold us accountable as an organization, and to make sure that we are continuing to do this work and continuing to like be in process with ourselves and with our community. And so initially it was me reaching out to folks in the community who had been a part of the community in some way. So there was some kind of familiarity with who Modern Witches is and what we do. And additionally, you know, there are a couple folks, I mean, I remember Betania, we had an interaction when you were a vendor, when there was someone vending who had kind of like stolen your techniques and was selling them at the market, which was a bad situation. And so I had a firsthand encounter with Betania where, you know, there was justice that needed to happen. And so that was definitely an impetus for me to invite Betania to be a part of this, because we'd already kind of had these types of conversations. And additionally, I believe also Sanyu, we'd had some interaction about, you know, the lack of diversity in the marketplace. And so I reached out to Sanyu to be a part of it. It's kind of like following up on these conversations and these threads that really demanded attention, and probably should have been followed up on way sooner.
So, I'm curious, for myself and maybe for some people that are watching, to get to know everyone kind of individually a little bit and find out how you got into your craft and into this industry, if you will, because it is becoming an industry, or it is an industry, has been, I guess, for quite some time. But and into this particular community, and why do you stay in it?
I'll go. I got into talking to the dead, which I've been doing since I was a child, but I guess you could say professionally after going through a decade-long depression and really deciding that I was no longer going to do my best to live the life I thought others wanted me to live, but I was going to do my best to live a life that fulfilled me and made me happy and created joy, which at the time just seemed like an insane, crazy idea. And through following, that thread, I realized actually through my own experiences in the spiritual community that there were very few places that I felt I could see anyone that even looked like me, but anyone who was even aware that that was going on. There was no, there were some very bad experiences, and through that I decided to found Spirit House Collective and create a community around, what I felt was important. And I'm so glad that I did, and now the rest is history. I'm here with all of you, and it's been amazing.
Yes, I'll go. I came into official, I guess what we considered professional witch work through tarot, but I had always been doing the work through dreaming, actually. And I always knew from a child that basically adults weren't honest because my dreams were so informative and prophetic and unlike Earth, and no adults seem to talk about the dreamscape. And I thought that was incredibly strange since we all went there every night. And then when I would ask about things that I found out or just knew through the dreamscape, whether that be like sort of superficial premonition things like exactly what someone had in their laundry basket in my home as a child, because I wasn't like paying attention to those serious details at the time, but or other things are just having information that I otherwise shouldn't have had. I found that there was an entire realm of existence that adults seemed either ignorant of or willfully evasive of. And so that always allowed me to trust tools that other people were skeptical against. And that made tarot much easier to get into, as well as all the other kinds of divination and channeling that I've done since then. And I ended up at Witches Confluence last year because in 2019, because Jessie Susanna had an extra ticket and she's my boo. And so she invited me to the Bay to have sleepovers and to be with the witches. So I came up in 2019, not really knowing that that was going to be, the last time I did that physically, and then had reached out to Casey before George Floyd talking about the marketplace and asking if there was a board or a committee that represents inclusion or representation at all at Witches Confluence. And Casey circled back after George Floyd and acknowledged that she was late to respond and that she wanted to do something about it. And from that point on, I think that, different members came from different connections between all of us, and obviously all connected to Casey. And then I know that Rorya was our panel host in 2020 and was a natural inclusion for all of us after we had the first panel, to include them in the inclusion committee, as well as to take recommendations for all attendees for people that they think would be good additions to the team.
I can go next. I got hit on the volleyball. I got hit in the head by a volleyball when I was in 4th grade and skidded across the playground and landed face up and was like, oh shit, I believe the sky is blue because someone told me it was blue. And that one thought, I applied to my entire life ever since then. I was like, what else do I believe that people told me I believe because they told me it? I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana. I left there when I was 18. So I was in the city of the dead where we walked with spirits, had common like traditions that were and different types of medicine that were just natural to us. And I moved to the Bay Area. Well, before I moved to the Bay Area, I was still in that space with unresolved guilt and shame through the practices that I was brought up, which was Roman Catholic during the week and Southern Baptist on weekends. And those practices didn't work for me. I didn't find freedom in releasing those practices. Instead, I found guilt. And when I tried to step away from that, I kept being drawn back to that path. So much so that I went to go get baptized in a Southern Baptist church briefly when I lived in Colorado. And when the pastor put me under the water, I heard a voice come into my whole spirit that said, "Child, seek me in your own way." And I was like, bet. And I got out of that water, I dried off, and I walked out of that church through the back door and never went back. And then I started looking for what spirituality, what love meant, all this other stuff. It was during the heyday of MySpace, right? So like there was a lot of bad graphics and websites, and I really stumbled around. I formed my own group, a circle of a learning coven, and I really all the information out there was all based on Eurocentric viewpoints. And then the viewpoints that I was finding that was in ATRs are traditional African traditional religions. I wasn't finding space for my queerness there at that point because of colonization. Has deep, deep, horrible roots. And I started to find my own way. And I kind of got pulled. Anytime I stepped off my path, spirit was like, what you doing, fam? What you doing? And I found my way into doing the healing work that I started doing as a child naturally. So as my healing journey continued, I became more like the child I was. And I remembered, I always did performance. I always did art. I always did touch, like I did laying out of hands. And so I found out how to sustain my life by doing those works. And I have a I ain't gonna say I have a well, no, I am. I'm loud. I got a big mouth. I'm actually a shy person, but I I roll hard, like just comes out. So I believe Casey reached out to me to I don't know if I reached out to you or if you reached out to me, but I came to present a class one year for Witches Confluence when it was in person at that point. And then the next year, I ran into a whole bunch of trouble with another convention because I said what they were doing were racist. They came from my throat and I got doxxed and all this other stuff. I was cursing them out, they were cursing me out. It was the whole thing. But Casey kind of reached out to me about being on the panel and being part of this committee during a time when I was about to say, fuck it, and walk away from the pagan community as a whole because of like the spiritual bypassing or the thought that I'm a witch, so I see everything and I'm evolved. And so they would stop their work and they wouldn't see how they were being not they were being trashy to other people. So when Casey reached out to me, I was walking away. And I'm so glad that Casey did because I met the other people on this committee and I was like, oh my God, there is a community for me. There is a space of people. There is a gathering of witches working together. There is someone who understands that there needs to be a boundary, that the community gets to be protected, that if people who are causing harm get to be corrected. And then if they don't correct behavior, they're invited to leave. So like, I love that. And it really, being part of this committee saved my spirit in so many ways. Being part of Witches Confluence saved my spirit as a professional witch, as in my private time as a witch, as what I would like to see us witches go and grow in the future. So yeah, that's my story.
That's beautiful. I'm glad that Casey stopped you in your tracks, because yeah, that would have been an incredible loss. Did anyone want to have anything to say? I don't want to move on without the opportunity to contribute. Okay. Okay, well, the next question that I have, it kind of piggybacks off the previous one, but specifically, why are you specifically here on this committee? Because it's one thing to ask, right? And like anyone can invite you to something, but you can absolutely say, no, I'm not interested. So that made you specifically say yes to this commitment to, well, at the time, diversity and inclusion, but now justice and liberation. And what were experiences that you'd had previously that motivated you to say yes? Anyone?
I'm gonna go again. I'll be real quick though. Casey said no to an elder who was transphobic. Casey said no to an elder who was transphobic. So when I heard that this person has said no to someone who was high up in the community, who was doing horrible stuff, I was like, yeah, I can roll with this person. I can roll with this group. Because and I said yes because again I was walking away, but also here was a community space and an event space that was saying no when I was embroiled with another community who was attacking me for standing up for Black and brown people and queer and trans people. So that's why I said yes. That's why I said yes. That's why I stayed. Because again, for me, my sign off is sparkles and sharp teeth. And it's like it takes both. And for to be in a group of people who are like who across the board say no, this is not okay, and we will not stand. And we'll also say, okay, I made a mistake. Here's my action. Here's the action of my accountability. Like that that's why I stay, and that's why I want to keep seeing this continue, even if I'm not a part of it, because fresh eyes got to come in when fresh eyes come in. But I'll always be here supporting on the sideline because someone was brave enough to say no, and someone was brave enough in a space in the Bay Area to say, "Oh, we're gonna have POC spaces, Black and brown spaces only. That's okay." Where other spaces were saying, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to exclude anyone. So that meant a lot to me. But it was definitely knowing that the witches' confluence, knowing that Casey said no to someone who was doing harm to someone in our community when the conference was just beginning, before they had the social cred that they have now. That's correct action that you often get hurt for, but it showed me that this is a place I can move in because there's a place I could trust.
Yeah, actually, I can kind of piggyback on that. I kind of forgot about what was going on before just Confluence, because I had a whole interaction with Spirit Weavers, a huge account where they basically, before 2020 and COVID and all these things, because there haven't been physical gatherings of Spirit Weavers in mass in the way that they used to be. But basically, they charge the practitioner who does the workshop, but they also make you apply. So they apply, you apply, and they charge. And I had basically got accepted and was just gonna not go when I realized that, because I hadn't heard all the legalese about it, and I'd heard a lot of things. I know people who had gone and blah blah blah, and the exposure and 100,000 people following you on IG, blur blur. But I just decided instead, because I'm the word witch and a bitch is mouthy. So I just instead sent them an email like, I don't think you should be charging any Black or Indigenous people as long as you're on unceded territory that you own, and that you're asking for their expertise, which you don't have a right to have. So like, I'm not going to pay you, but do something about that. And their response to that was, you don't have to pay because thank you. But when you come to Spirit Weavers, you can talk to our, I don't know, circle of inclusive people. There's a name for it. I don't know what it's called. And I looked through the images of these people. It's like a person of color panel. And I had to explain to them like Black person and person of color, not synonymous. And in fact, Black women made women of color up for people of color to have to describe themselves so they could differentiate their experience, which is how you got person of color. And they were like, thank you, we didn't know that. And I was like, these are all very troubling signs. And then COVID hit. So, I mean, I didn't have to go, physically speaking, and they didn't have the gathering. And I worked with them later, not because they started paying people, but basically just the feel good woo-ness of the way that people want to go about the things they feel shittiest about, as myself and someone who was raised in like an African household where conversation you learn through interrogation or through extreme questioning about what you are doing at all times. I just never thought getting better had to do with like, I'm from Caribbean people. You drink your bitters. Like that's how you keep the bugs out your skin. You take the things that you don't want to take because they're good for you. And so when Casey circled back and acknowledged that she had been delayed in her response to me and that was her issue, and that, and immediately extended me an opportunity to interact. I was like, yeah, I mean, personally, I like talking, I like being interviewed, I like being seen, and I like being represented. So I'm going to be on as many boards and committees as I get invited to, point blank period. And especially because Casey pays us for our time. The budget is explicit. Jesse Susanna helps Casey with the budget, so it's extra explicit from just a knowledge perspective, and a lot of things for between us are very clear, even though we're just a part of the sort of like working, acting, live version of which is Confluence, whereas like Sarah and Casey, they're on other committees that we are not part of, that do logistical things that we don't do and that know things that we don't know. But even still, we're still very informed of processes and how money breaks down and who's getting paid what. And then we can always say, it's like, I'm asked Nikki, I want Nikki to be paid. We're gonna ask Rorya. Rorya needs to be paid ahead of time, like these kinds of logistics that are actually sustaining and supporting.
Yes. Thank you, Sanyu, for bringing up money. Because when we have conversations about, equity, justice, people don't talk about money a lot. That's a major component. You can't actually have a liberation movement without some funds. So yeah, like where the money at. And I want to highlight too that is a major distinction between this group right here and general diversity and groups. Typically there is no compensation, especially in corporations. For example, they will ask you to be a part of their group and take up your time and take your ideas, as Rorya mentioned earlier, not compensate you for your emotional labor, for your knowledge production. Sometimes you're bringing some ancestral knowledge into the space, and you're not being compensated. That is so major. So I just want to that's super important that you all are being paid for your time, and that is a step in the direction of, you know, creating justice, creating equity, repairing the harm that has been caused. So that's, and that transparency too, especially with the economics, is outstanding. So with that, I wanted to ask, what are common misconceptions that you think, or that you've, you know, experienced in conversation, people, you know, have said about diversity and inclusion, and how can we combat those misconceptions starting in community? And I think that the money part is like, bam, right there. That's the first step. But what has been your experience as far as people's misunderstandings about this work?
So for me, when I've mentioned that I'm on a diversity or an inclusion team, people look at me like, "Oh, you, really you?" Because with that language and what we've seen, the misunderstandings around it has been that you are like a token, or you're being used, or that you're being used to give someone else in power a good appearance, and you're kind of selling yourself for this, like, what are you getting out of this? Or you're selling us out because you know that they're not going to do the things they say they're going to do. It's fruitless, all that other stuff, which has definitely been my experience in many other spaces where I have done this work. So when I let people know that I'm being paid for my time, that really does shut them up real quick. They're like, "Oh, you're being paid." When I let them know that we are talking about policies or implementing things, when I let them know that there are consequences for other people's actions and for our own actions, that really gets them to go like, "Oh," again, I'm back to the T thing. The compensation and consequences, I say, are two of the main things that have definitely set this work apart, and that isn't always like mentioned or used in D&I. So I hope that was clear.
That was very clear. That was good. Anyone else?
It's not a misconception, but I think it's more like an experience that I've had maybe in giving feedback to organizations. And I do think that the way that I ended up on this committee was through giving feedback of some sort. Like, I was trying to remember what was it. I was like, I'm pretty sure it's because I complained about something. It's like why I'm here. Or like maybe all of us are here, you know, but I couldn't remember exactly what it was. But like, I feel like that experience so often is, you know, frustrating and disheartening, and like often a fucking waste of time and energy. And something that I really love about this committee, or that like has been really healing about this process, and it was reminding me of the conversation, or like how Nikki had brought up the conversation that we had, the committee was having before we let you know, everybody in to the conversation, was like, Rorya was like, "Oh, well," kind of like, I was thinking we should change the committee name to, you know, the Justice and Liberation Committee. And we were all just like, yeah, okay, let's do that. Like within like 3 minutes, you know, like just like, yeah. And I feel like our meetings have always gone like that. Like one of us is just like, we should do this, or, you know, we got this feedback, and we're all just like, yeah, okay, let's handle it. It's never, ever a belabored anything. So I think, you know, then when it's not necessarily like a misconception, it's more like an accurate conception that often like diversity, equity, inclusion work is like frustrating and laborious, and it does not have to be that.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm curious as to how you all feel about your personal identities, because there are intersections, and your lived experience, how you've brought that into to strengthen it, how your lived experience has impacted how you've shown up as a member of this committee. Does anyone have anything to say about that? Anyone? Okay. I'm queer, they, them, I'm fat, I am Black, I am neurodivergent, I am also disabled. And I feel and I have had times where I was like, I recently had a whole thing with PTSD coming up, and there were meetings I couldn't make it to, and I reached out to people and let people know I'm fucked up right now, like I'm going through something difficult, and I was able to ask, can someone catch me up? And I was not treated as if I was a burden. I was not treated with any lack of trust that I wasn't going to show up in the future. Um, Casey had made time, even though we're coming up on the event, Casey made time to sit with me and to catch me up on what happened in the meetings. And I feel very seen and held in this space, which is why I got very limited energy. I don't invest my energy anymore anywhere that isn't gonna nourish me. And I feel very nourished and held in this space, and I could show up even when I'm not at 100% and participate, or be like, you ain't at 100%, do you need to rest? Like, you can go lay down. And it's not a bad thing. I feel so supported in all of my identities. Um, Being genderqueer as well, I felt very, very held. And also my name, I recently changed my name, and I don't know if y'all met me as this name or not, but I don't feel like y'all did. But I've recently changed my name. There was no hiccup. There was just okay. And yeah, my identities are not in other spaces, especially the spaces I was talking about before, Pantheacon, that I went head to head with. Like, there was this idea of you leave these parts of yourself at the door and bring in only the parts that unify us. And I found myself leaving so much of myself at the door for other people's comfort. That is not existing in this space. I get to show up with the fullness of myself. And to have those things seen as valuable and desirable and worthy of celebration. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That humanizing, goes a long way, and seeing people and holding people. And yeah, that is beautiful. I wonder if anyone could speak on the journey through this past year as a member committee, this young committee, especially in an interesting time, not being able to be physically present, and throughout a global health crisis. What has the journey been like, and has anything surprised you throughout this?
I think just to piggyback on what Rorya said about the space being made for all of the circumstances you just mentioned, like as part of the organizing committee and doing the DI work, or the justice and liberation work as we call it now, I feel like anytime I'm having, a hard time, I can still show up, and Casey always makes space and time for however we're feeling and showing up, and she's very accommodating. And having this committee to come to and be able to like safely express what I'm like experiencing as a biracial person, as a person of color, as all these things, and know that I'm going to be supported is so unique. And when I go out in the world and I'm like talking to other people about the situations they're in, like I recognize that this is incredibly unique and that a lot of other people don't have this type of support. And like having that, I'm so grateful. And knowing that, together having these conversations, like it's not just about us acknowledging the fact that there's these issues, it's that we're actively trying to figure out ways to like create access and lessen the harm for others, because it's like, once you feel this environment that, Rorya spoke on and I'm speaking on, you want everybody to be able to have a safe space like that, because you see the impact of it in your life. And so it's really about us trying to like make this possible for as many people as we can, And I think that there's this misconception. I know you asked this question earlier and I wanted to speak up on it. With DI work, it's like, because it's become so like proliferated that all these companies now have diversity and inclusion committees, like it's really about the optics. And so when I tell people that I'm part of a DI committee, they just are like, oh, well, you're a person of color. Like, of course, they don't know that we meet really regularly. And then I tell them the things we talk about and like how much care and consideration is put into the decisions we make and how actively we try and like figure it out and like invite people into conversation. Like, it's not like we're trying to hang anyone out to dry. When there's an issue, we want to understand better what's going on and how we can reduce the negative impact on both sides of the situation. There is labor that happens and it is unique that we are paid for it. And again, that goes into being supported. And I'm so grateful to be a part of this, because I know that it's not as popular as it should be, but I hope that changes,
Yes. I just wanted to piggyback and say something that is, and maybe it answers both of the last questions, but something I really appreciate about the Justice and Liberation Committee is that things come up, internal things, and we're not always immediately on the same page about that. Sometimes we late, sometimes we missed the meeting, sometimes we missed an email, sometimes we're getting caught up in real time, sometimes you're entering the conversation and there's already been many important exchanges and you're just listening to track. And there's more explaining that needs to be done. It's not always immediate consensus, but there's something I greatly appreciate about Casey, especially because of the optics of Casey's, physicalized privilege in this world because of supremacy ideation and oppression and conditioning and shit like that, is that Casey's not particularly invested in being right. Casey is more invested in making things work. And when you want to make things work with people who aren't represented, then you have to make things work in the way that makes them represented. And so, you might notice that Casey has spoken the least. And we have made active intent in meetings for different panel members to lead the meeting each time. And, for those with less representation to speak more than those with more representation. So we actively practice it amongst ourselves to the best of our ability. We are educated by each other in the process. We're educated by people who attend Witches Conference by including them in the process. Just like we created community agreements this year. And then we mailed them up to all the practitioners and we asked them to edit and add. And then we did that, and then they made corrections or informed us whether we, were causing harm by the inappropriate use of language or by the way that we were doing things. And we addressed that. So we are doing the work and holding each other accountable, which is the most important thing about the committee. And also, if you miss a meeting or shit is fucked up, you're not like withheld pay and you're not withheld position. and you're not given less time next time because you didn't show up. You know, there's no animosity and there's no competition. And I think that that's kind of central to our process.
That's good. I think that the conversation up to this point has been kind of warm and fuzzy. It's been, you know, very, very nice and encouraging, and just super positive, upbeat. But since we are invested in keeping it real and, you know, impacting positive change, I'm curious as to what your opinions are about where the witches confluence needs to improve the most from a justice and liberation perspective.
I can quickly say we talk about this and knew we would be talking about it, but like obviously we know that the inclusion committee needs more people who aren't as represented, queer, blacker, less abled, less non-neurodivergent, more like people to inform us, also diasporically, culturally, ethnically, not just people from the States. Lots of other things that we want to improve just on for our operations, which we want to reflect who we want to attract to the event. And I can also say that I have wanted this kind of accountability so that when people speak of covens, which of course in which communities people love to do, that it's a coven that actually supports the members in it. And it's not just a coven that like makes, you know, dresses up as hocus pocus during Halloween and feels good about doing things like that. You know, do that too. I have a great Halloween costume, but other than that, it's just we need more people, essentially.
And to come from that space of needing more people, there is also more we can do with more people. Like we have talked about it as a committee of having like specific sessions for witches that center liberation and justice, like magic, and not just the magic, but also practical things we as human beings can do as we hold spaces and hold each other and come together. So I feel like as we have more people, as we get more resources, I know there's some things that I want to do as well, but I do think we need more of the showing on how to do it. And that's the part where I'm tripping up, because we talk about it, but how do we actually move from the talking into the action? And we're figuring that out because I've been in so many spaces that have just talked, and I know that so many of us have been in spaces that have just talked, and so many of us have been in spaces where we've had to fight. And I know for myself, I'm now in a space where I don't have to fight, and now I'm like, oh, what do I do now that I don't have to fight? Like, what can I create? And so my brain kind of like stalled out. Like, what do you create when you have space to actually do it? So I think we as a committee, space and the safety. Now that doesn't mean that stuff doesn't get twisted every once in a while. It does. Like no space is 100% safe. But what I trust is that stuff is going to get handled or addressed. But yeah, what do we actually do now that we have this and we don't have to fight? It's a brain switch, and I think that's taking a little bit of time. And like I was said, I feel like we should be having more of things that are just specifically geared to this. More panels, more roundtables, more town halls, more instructionals, more listening to our community now that we have this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tina in the chat asked this question. I think it's super relevant. And it was, when there's an issue in the community, especially with marginalized groups, how do you handle those concerns if they are brought forward to you? Anybody want to speak on that?
I think we had 4 issues brought to our attention, or 4 conversations brought to our attention over the course of this past year, like between last confluence and this one. And usually we're all just sort of like alerted as a committee, because the issue will come to the central organizing committee and just says like, okay, this is what's going on. This is how it's, this is what communication has already been had. This is what we're asking, what kind of feedback we're asking. And really it's just like, what do you guys think we should do? So we'll all just kind of give feedback, usually by email, about what we think we should do. People will take maybe different responsibility for different pieces. We'll make a suggestion and then kind of start fleshing it out in response. And it's been, we definitely had the experience this year of trying to responding to concern coming from some members of the community and causing more injury in our response, and then having to be like, okay, let's explore like what happened and, the inadequacy of our response, or just what we didn't see, and like, how do we want to shift and change what we did from there. So that's kind of what we do in a non-specific sort of way.
I also think we hold and honor the fact that no group or no community is a monolith. And so we first work with the person where they're at to make sure that we're accurately hearing what they're trying to say. We discuss it with ourselves, amongst ourselves. If we have resources or access to people within that group who we can get further learning from, we get further learning. And then we go back to the person and we speak with them. We really do the work of trying to make it right without having them have to harm themselves further by educating us. So we do our own work and we speak directly to the person to make sure they see us. We move from a place where it's not about the ego. It's not about, oh, how do I shut you up so that you don't blow up our spot? We move from a place of, oh shit, my intention was not this. I acknowledge my impact, and then work through it. So I think it's definitely by holding people in their humanity is how we do that work. Yeah, and again, acknowledging that no group is a monolith and one person's experience is not everybody's experience, and take that do no harm really seriously and figure out how to do, oh my gosh, it's getting late for me, how to do accountability in that way. That makes sense. So if marginalized groups, yeah, marginalized, we pull from our own knowledge resources, our own people that we have, and we don't talk to. I have not noticed this is the one place where I feel like we're not talking to people who are like, oh no, you're great, blah 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 blah. Notice we go to people who are like, I want your shit to succeed, so I'm gonna tell you where you fucked up. And I think moving in that way is what makes a difference.
What is your vision for liberation for people with marginalized and oppressed identities in this community specifically?
To get them paid, to get them centered, to get them bettered internally, feeling better. Because I hope that, when you come for gathering or treatment or soothing, that's what you get. in any context of healing work, practitioner work, in any do no harm context, no matter the pigmentation, particularly in our community, because we're making all these efforts to invite people in my case, who look like me and who look like us and who look different from us. It's particularly important to do that. And I was also going to say, just popped out of my mind now. So I guess I'll let somebody else speak while I remember what I was going to.
Anyone else?
Yeah, for me, the word like accessibility comes up for me. Making healing accessible, making the space accessible. That's for me one of the reasons I joined the committee, is I had a lot of friends in the first year that like I convinced to come check it out, that were just like, I can't be in this space. This space is too white, or this space is too new agey, or this is too this or that. And I just had been in so many like herbalists or other spaces like that. And so I really wanted to be a part of like, how can we change that? How can that be different? And I think Casey shared, I gave some feedback about the vendor and teacher application, just like, how do you put like, where did you learn this? Like, do you have permission to be teaching this? Like, what's the lineage? And I was heard, and that got implemented. And so when I got asked, I was like, if that's the way this is going to work, yes. Like, I was excited about it. So yeah.
Yes, to what Batania said, that was incorporated, and then people who didn't want to do it weren't included. It was as easy as that. It was as easy as a united front and a resolution to do something. And I think even last year, something glitchy happened with the technology and somebody's workshop wasn't attended. And we're always doing our work to be like, okay, well, how can we give them a position or a platform later on? And how can we pay them? And how can we center them individually? Because as I had said in the beginning of this, acknowledgement, an apology is an acknowledgement. It is not repair. So when we do harm, even when we were figuring out the community agreements and misrepresenting some language, the conversation then became, okay, well, like every season, what if we have a panel where the people who are represented, Swana people, Afro-diasporic people, neurodivergent people in these practices get their own panel, but get to use Witches Confluence's, platform with the number of followers and the newsletters, and gets to use all the Justice and Liberation, previously Inclusion Committee individuals' profiles to share that information. But more money in pockets, more confidence, more practice, more practitioners, essentially, I think, is the goal for me in being a part of this and staying a part of this.
I think our goals for the committee are not so different from our goals for the entire group, for the entire space. I don't think there's any separation between those two things. Having a space that is accessible, having a space that can move and change and grow, having a space where people can, sacred spaces, so many of our sacred spaces, when they don't move from a liberated justice space, means that pieces of you get left out, you don't get held, you don't get seen, and you get harmed just for coming in. And so we want to, I'm speaking for myself, I want to be part of creating a space where someone like me with all these multiple intersections can go in and still feel valued, can see themselves as represented, but more than that, I want to create a space where I can learn, where I don't have to be defensive. Like, for me, being Black, being queer, being trans, being genderqueer, being neurodivergent means I gotta check every single list of who gonna be there. People like, you want to come? I'm like, who gonna be there? Because I need to know if I gotta burn some Baileys, if I gotta wear, like, what stones I gotta bring with me. Like, I gotta know what I gotta line my spirit so I don't end up with my foot in somebody's ass. Like, so I want to be part of creating a space or helping hold a space where you could come in and not have to be on a defensive. That where you can learn without your survival, like all your survival techniques like kicking in automatically. And if something does pop off, that you know that you're going to be held in your humanity. That's what I want to build.
And thank you for that, for the ancient African query, who all over there? And basically what's happening is we all over here. That's what the answer should be. That's what the reply should be. We're all here in this space and everyone is being represented. And there's no hierarchy, right? So how does shifting into a diversity and inclusivity, equity, justice, how does shifting into those ideologies, praxis, amplify the impact of the contribution that witches make in society? Does anyone have anything to say about that?
That's a big old one, and I gotta go exactly at 8 because I know 85 million Scorpios, and it's my bestie's birthday, and the bitch is already late. But what I want to say about that is, oh my God, now I gotta have you ask the question again because I don't.
I will ask the question again. How does shifting into diversity, inclusivity, justice amplify the impact of the contributions that witches make in society?
I think it allows us to be in community and of humanity. I think in spiritual groups, there's a desire to over other. We are so different. We are so unique. No one in the world is doing what work like we're doing, which is culty language, essentially. Ancestors have been doing this shit for a really long fucking time, or else humanity wouldn't be here. So, you know, everybody who you think was scratching their ass and running from saber-toothed tigers was doing this work in the most primal, urgent ways. And I think that by genuinely creating a space where that is true and where spiritual and holistic practices can also be practiced without bypassing the social conditioning and the supremacy ideation that's evident in a nihilistic Machiavellian white cis heteropatriarchal global society, gives more credibility to the practice. Because if the practices can't address real world issues, then they're make-believe. They're on some J.K. Rowling Harry Potter shit. It's on some, I'll write the book, but I won't live the life. And we write what we live in this. And we also make sure we keep each other accountable. And what I was going to type, but I'll say is like, to quote the also incredibly brilliant Ebony Janice, white urgency is violence. So there's not this desire to show, there's not this urgency to show and this rush to show people that we're like improved. We're actually taking the time to implement those improvements explicitly, sharing the information in collective and public ways, but also the work won't be done even when we die. So there's no urgency to get to the performative mountain peak of we're done with the diversing and including part. No, like many generations fuck this up, many generations fix this up. And our job is to just do the work until the day we die with fun and joy and anger when we have it. Be real.
I'm gonna say that for me, very personally, I feel about my art the same way I feel about my magic and my magical practices and this group, which is like, if it's not, for me, it's all resistance and rebuilding work. Like, if my magical practices don't include justice and liberation, especially during this time, like, and my magic is on some Nina Simone type shit. It's like, if it is not, making change in the world, if it's not saying something about the world, then what am I doing? Like, people treat the spirit like it informs the flesh, but my flesh is informing my spirit. Like, there are things that I can learn in this body that I can't learn any other way. And so my work is all about the body and being a sovereign embodiment in this body, being a liberated person that moves for justice. And so I feel that if you a witch right now and you ain't about that life, then that's a choice you making. And I want to hang out with people who making a different choice. Like, I mean, you can make that choice. You might have the privilege to make that choice, or you might be making that choice out of survival because you can't see, you can't deal. But I want to be hanging with people in spaces like these that are like, I'm making the choice. These two things are interconnected for me. My magic for me has definitely been, especially being from the South, magic has been in my blood as what we use, the tool of the oppression. If you ain't got money, if you ain't got land, if you ain't got like, if you ain't got like whatever, social status and whatever socioeconomic stuff or fairness or like whatever, like what you got is your will and the lens through which you see the world and how you focus that will. And so that's all this is for me. Magic is a tool of press, and that's how I move with it. And that's also why I'm part of this group, because I love it.
Yeah. We are coming way up on time really, really quickly. And I feel like I could be here with you all evening. I really, really have like a million questions that I cannot ask, and I will not receive answers to at this time, maybe at another time. But if anyone in the audience has any questions, now's the time to speak now or forever hold your peace. And in the meantime, while anyone is formulating any questions, I just wanted to make sure that we go around one last time and kind of share, your name, your area of expertise, where people can find you, any final statements you may have, and also any resource that you would like to direct people to that want to dive deeper into diversity and inclusion, equity and justice, liberation within the context of witchcraft, spirituality, healing, or in this specific community. So if, you can just kind of jump in and give us a farewell where we can find you, what your name is. And
I'm gonna cheat and go first because I gotta go. I am Sanya Estelle, also known as the Word Witch. My specialty is soothsaying, truth telling. Even in Ifa, my Odu is Orumila says you love the truth. I love the truth. I think the truth is a broad spectrum of very interesting things, and that everything has a kernel of it if it's actually looking at it from the position of the opinion. And I think for that reason, I do that in everything. Writing, artist, card reading, just generalist soothsaying sessions. And I do my best to keep people around me like this group of folk that when I'm not doing that, can point it out in a way that it's just like breathing, having breakfast. So I'm happy to be here. It's been my pleasure. You can find me on the internet. All of our stuff is on Witches Confluence's page, on the website. I know we're sharing this video. You can also watch last year's video. I'm sure Casey will talk about that, but it was a pleasure to be here with you guys. Before we let y'all in, we didn't know if anyone was going to show up. So the fact that there was 55 people here was very blessed. So thank you for caring and being a part of the community.
I think I went after Sanyu last time, so I'll just go. Again, my name is Asia Dashur. I'm a medium and spiritual advisor. You can find me at thespiritguidecoach.com that's my website, that's Instagram, or Spirit House Collective. And I just want to just briefly say that listening to all of you speak just immediately just gives me chills and fills my heart and makes me feel so honored to be here as we continue to grow and learn from each other. And we're all gonna make mistakes, but just the transparency, just honestly the desire to fucking be here and do this work just like has been the cherry on my day. It's like all that bullshit that I've been dealing with, I'm like, no, there's a reason. This is the reason. So I just wanted to say that I'm just really humbled, and I just can't wait to continue to get to know all of you. Those of you on the panel, those of you who will be on the panel, who are probably talking to us, on the other side, as when we go to bed tonight, and then everyone that's just been here, also just showing that this is important. When you show up to something like this, you say, yes, this is valid. This needs to continue to be here. You're not, screaming into a void. So I'm just really appreciative. So thank you.
I'll jump in at this point. I just wanted to share too before this ends that we had implemented this reparative pricing structure last year for our event. And this year we were able to generate by the community 86 free tickets to this event. So thank you to everyone who purchased that extra ticket. Thank you to everyone who put your name on that wait list. I appreciate your patience. I really hope we can double that next year. It was just so amazing to see. So just a lot of gratitude for everyone who's participating in that. I'm Casey, she, her. You can find me at Wanderer's Tarot, which is where I do my divination work, mainly with tarot, but it's evolving. And I'm just so grateful for every one of you. It feels so fated that we're all connected. And I really, really feel that, and just appreciating our deep connection.
My name again is Rorya, and my specialty is setting people on fire in a loving way, really bro magic, gassing people to fuck up magically and emotionally, and being like, yes, get this life, because that's what I live for. So yeah, bro magic is definitely my shit. And I can be found at asovereignembodiment.org. I also have a thing called Project Etisane, which is raising money for queer and Black trans and licensed and pre-licensed therapists to be able to take rest. You can also find me on Instagram as Mammy is Dead. I also have mammyisdead.com. So thank y'all so much for coming to this. And Nikki, thank you for being such an amazing moderator at this roundtable. It's been so I'm just gonna be I'm a fan. I'm a fan. So so thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you everybody for coming and showing up for this. And I hope to see y'all at the rest of the convention, and hope to see y'all online too.
I guess I can go. Thanks everybody for being here. It feels redundant to introduce myself again, but Tanya, I do a lot of things, but I make magical tools for cleaning and transforming spaces. I make brooms, and I work in trauma recovery. I think my magic thing is really transformation. I do transformative justice work too. I think I mentioned I'm a formerly incarcerated person, and it's a really important part of my identity and why I am who I am. And I have a website for my brooms, bristleandstick.com, and I'm on Instagram as Lady Ursus. And yeah, just sending everybody a lot of big love and solidarity. Thanks for being here.
I'm Dusty Susanna Carnatz. You can find me at moneywitch.com. You can find me on Instagram at money.witch. You can find me at YouTube/moneywitch. You can find me on Twitter, not doing very much, but potentially aspiring to do more at money_witch or -witch, something like that. But again, I do intuitive financial education for healers, hustlers, and creatives. And I want to just sort of loop in an answer to Nikki's last question about how is this liberation work connected with magical work, which is to me the definition, my personal definition of magic is that taking responsibility for yourself as an energetic entity. And so I think that is the same as liberation work, taking responsibility, you know, and inviting, I think if, you know, as the committee, like inviting the community, inviting the confluence as an entity to also take responsibility for itself as an energetic entity. And, you know, all of us as sort of like points in that constellation to all consider the energy that we bring, yeah, just to the constellation and what we want it to be.
I'll go. Thank you everyone for coming. My name again is Sarah Bennett. I am an intuitive digital creative. You can find me at Intuitively Aligned. My website is earthandether.co. And I think Nikki also asked if we wanted to share our resource, and I would just love to point people to the NAP ministry because they center rest as resistance. And for me, rest has been really important lately and something I'm just trying to really lean into. And so I just wanted to encourage everyone to take care of themselves this weekend. And I know Casey shared the self-care guide, and just, yeah, check out the NAP ministry, take care of yourself, take a nap, get rest. And I love you all and thank you for being here.
And a lot of us are going to be over at this another Zoom link at a happy hour event right after this. So we, you know, we're happy to go over there and be in more conversation or more just hanging out or whatever people want to do.
Yes. Thank you all so much. This has been an incredible honor, a pleasure. I've loved every moment. Thank you everyone for being in attendance. This has been the 2021 Modern Witches Confluence Inclusion Committee Roundtable, and going forward will be the Justice and Liberation Committee. So next year, that's going to be the name. You all are so amazing. This is so wonderful. Yes, hop over to the hour. And I just thank you all for being here. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm gonna go make a drink. I'll see you guys soon.
Are you going to make a pomegranate margarita or something different?
I'm gonna make a drink with tequila, and I bought pomegranate, so I have to like do some like seed removal and muddling, but yes.
Oh, like an actual pomegranate. You're getting into it.
I'm gonna do it. I'm like,
Okay. All right, I'll see you there.
Hi.